The financial interest of the psychiatric industry is to feed this drug industry. And the drug industry's financial interest is to come up with the agents to feed the psychiatric industry. Psychiatric industry then is endlessly engaged in identifying new disorders, which can then be treated with psychiatric drugs. Now, psychiatric drugs are the primary drugs that are consumed in America. 1 in 5 people, I believe, if not even higher than that, is on some sort of psychoactive drug in the United States. That is very chilling when you realize the adverse effects associated with these drugs and the number of people that must be experiencing those adverse effects, which include predisposition towards suicide, predisposition towards violence. Is it perhaps the case that when we're giving 1 in 5 people these drugs and the effects are admitted by the FDA, shouldn't we expect aberrant behavior to be cropping up all over the nation? It's striking that there isn't outrage in the government and in the medical community over the fact that over a majority of those who have committed these school shootings have been on drugs, psychiatric drugs. And these psychiatric drugs are the very ones that the FDA admits increase the risk of suicide and violent behavior. So Adam Lanza was under psychiatric care. He had a breaking point where he went into the Sandy Hook Elementary School and he killed so many children. Now, some say he went off his meds, some say he stayed on his meds. There's a strong public interest because we're talking about kids who appear to have problems of one kind or another, but there is no pattern in the sense of them having a clear connection. Well, maybe the pattern is in the drugs they're being given. When we got involved on behalf of a group there that was interested in finding out the cause, we suddenly discovered that the coroner's office would not release any information that was of any significance. We ask, may we know the drugs that this person consumed? And we're told, no, you can't look at the records. Said to be because they're protecting privacy interests. Privacy interests of who? Not the person who's dead. Privacy interests of the family? There are no privacy interests left. The family's interests have been extinguished by the acts of the person who've committed this heinous crime resulting in the death of all these kids. This is a public crime of momentous significance to the entire community, and we're researching to determine what caused him to do this. We want the records. The records are now not subject to any privacy protection. Give us the records. We won't give you the records. So we sued the state and we sued the coroner's office and we asked them to produce the records. During the course of that proceeding, statements were made that were rather shocking. The Assistant Attorney General in the Lanza case argued to the administrative law judge that it would be harmful to the public to allow the information about Lanza out because it might cause people to not take their psychiatric medication. And that kind of argument is ridiculous. We don't deprive people of access to information. We defend their First Amendment right to access to information, and we depend upon them to decide what's in their own best interest. But against that is this huge financial interest of both the psychiatric community and the drug industry. If this did not exist, if there wasn't this huge lobbying presence, I strongly suspect that the coroner's offices would release the information to the public. I strongly suspect that there would be a thorough investigation on the state and national level. But in the case of these people, there's this enormous interest in suppression of information and censorship. Why would they do that? Could it be that there are drug company interests at stake here? That if America were to discover that the majority of these kids committing these acts were on these drugs, and that these drugs have these adverse effects associated with them of increased suicide risk, of increased violent behavior, that they might think we ought to revisit this issue of whether we ought to give kids these drugs?